welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. James had never been the jealous type. In fact, he prided himself on being a man of reason, a man who trusted his wife Claire completely. They had been together for 6 years, married for 4, and had built a life in the quiet suburbs of Atlanta. They had everything anyone could ask for: a beautiful house, good jobs, and most importantly, a solid relationship. At least, that's what James thought. It was a normal Saturday morning, the kind where James would sip his coffee, read the newspaper, and enjoy the simple rhythms of his life. But that morning, something felt off. Claire had been acting differently for a few weeks now. It started with small things: lateness at dinner, sudden business trips that seemed to pop up out of nowhere, and moments when she'd pull away when James tried to show affection. He tried not to let it bother him. After all, she was busy with work, and life had its ups and downs. But something in his gut kept nagging at him. It was a Friday evening when the first real crack appeared. Claire had come home late, her face flushed, her hair a bit disheveled. When James asked her how her night went, she said it was just a work event, with some colleagues. But James noticed the way her eyes darted away from his as she answered. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something, that there was more to the story than she was letting on. The next morning, he casually mentioned it to his best friend, Dan, over breakfast. "Man, you ever get that feeling that something's off with your wife?" James asked, trying to keep his tone light. Dan, who had been married for almost a decade himself, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean off?" James shrugged. "Just, she's been acting different, like distant, and she's been going to these events I don't know much about. Just doesn't feel right." Dan looked at him thoughtfully. "You think she's cheating on you?" James laughed awkwardly. No way. I mean, Claire, nah, I trust her. But something's just not right." Dan nodded slowly. "Yeah, man, I get it. But you got to be careful. Sometimes our minds play tricks on us." James didn't want to admit it, but deep down the seed of doubt had already been planted. That night, after Claire went to bed, he stayed up late scrolling through her social media accounts. He had never done this before. He wasn't the type of guy to spy on his wife. But something was pushing him, some invisible force that he couldn't ignore. He found her Facebook page, and at first everything seemed fine, until he noticed something strange. A comment on one of her photos from a man he didn't recognize. "You were amazing last night. Can't wait for the next one." His heart skipped a beat. Last night, he clicked on the man's profile and was immediately hit by a barrage of photos of Claire. All taken at the same event, her arm around him, laughing, smiling in a way that James had never seen before. The comments from this guy were more than just friendly. They were intimate, personal. James' mind raced. He couldn't understand. Was this the work event Claire had been talking about? Was this the business trip she had mentioned last week? A sinking feeling washed over him. He hadn't seen this man before, but Claire had clearly been spending a lot of time with him. Was this just a work colleague, or was something more going on? James didn't sleep that night. He kept replaying the images in his head, his mind unable to let go of the suspicion. The next day he followed Claire as she left for another one of her events. He told himself it was just for peace of mind. He wasn't being paranoid. He wasn't spying. He was just trying to understand. He trailed her from a distance, keeping his car a few blocks behind her. She drove to a bar on the outskirts of town, a place James had never seen her go before. His pulse quickened. He waited outside for what felt like hours. Finally, Claire left the bar with the same man from the photos. They laughed together, and she placed a hand on his arm as they walked toward a hotel nearby. James felt a sharp pain in his chest. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was all coming together now: the late nights, the distance, the secrecy. But this wasn't the confirmation he had been hoping for. This was the reality he wasn't ready to face. When Claire finally came home that night, James was already in bed, staring at the ceiling, pretending to sleep. His mind was a storm of emotions: anger, disbelief, hurt, and confusion. He didn't want to confront her just yet. He wasn't sure what he would say or how he would react, but he knew he had to talk to her soon. He needed answers. Claire climbed into bed beside him, oblivious to the storm inside him. She kissed his cheek, as she always did, and whispered, "Good night, babe." James barely responded. He was too angry, too hurt, too lost in his own thoughts to even acknowledge her. His mind was fixated on one question: how could she do this to me? The next few days were a blur for James. He went through the motions of his usual routine, but everything felt different. Every time he looked at Claire, his mind flashed back to the image of her laughing with that man, walking into a hotel together. Every touch, every word, every moment felt like a lie. The house, once a place of comfort and warmth, now felt cold and foreign to him. He didn't say anything. Not right away. He didn't know how to. The tension between them grew, but Claire didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she was just pretending not to. Either way, she kept up her usual routine, leaving for work in the mornings, coming home in the evenings, smiling at him in a way that felt like a mask. The small talk they had before dinner seemed so shallow, so empty. James had always been a man of action, not words. But how could he confront her without the full truth? How could he accuse her of something so monumental, something that could shatter everything they'd built, without knowing for certain? His gut told him everything he needed to know, but his mind kept questioning, second-guessing, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it was all a misunderstanding. Then came the day he decided it was time. Claire was getting ready to go out again, another of her vents. James couldn't take it anymore. He had to confront her. Now, Claire, he said, his voice tight, holding back the flood of emotions that threatened to spill out. We need to talk. Claire paused, glancing over at him from the mirror where she was fixing her hair. Is everything okay? She asked, a touch of concern in her voice. But James could see through it. He could see the way she was trying to hide her anxiety, the way she shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. I don't know. Is everything okay with you? James asked, his voice sharper than he intended. He stood up, crossing the room to where she stood. The space between them felt heavy, suffocating. She frowned slightly, tilting her head. What do you mean? You're acting strange. James clenched his fists, trying to control the anger rising within him. You've been acting strange for weeks, Claire. I've been patient, but I can't keep pretending everything is fine. You're hiding something from me. Claire's face hardened, her brows knitting together in confusion. What are you talking about? I'm not hiding anything. James didn't buy it. He took a deep breath, then spoke the words that had been burning inside him for days. I know about the man. The one from your photos. The one you've been spending time with. Claire's expression faltered just for a moment. But it was enough. That split-second crack in her forehead was all James needed to see. James, I don't know what you're talking about, Claire said, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. You're overreacting. Am I? James' voice was low, almost a growl. You think I don't see it? You think I don't know what's going on? I followed you the other night. I saw you with him. I saw you go into that hotel. Claire's face went pale. She turned away from him, running a hand through her hair. You followed me. Her voice was tinged with disbelief. You, how could you? James felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He had never thought he would have to say these words. I'm not stupid, Claire. I saw the way you were with him, the way you look at him, the way he looks at you. Don't try to deny it. Claire stood there for a moment, silent, her back to him. James could hear her breathing, shallow and quick, like she was trying to steady herself. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for this to happen, she said, turning slowly to face him. Her eyes were wide, but there was no real shame there, no real remorse. I didn't want to hurt you. James' heart pounded in his chest. He had been waiting for this moment, but hearing her words, seeing her so calm, made it feel even worse. He had hoped she would admit it, that she would at least show some emotion, but there was nothing but cold distance. Then why, Claire? He asked, his voice cracking. Why didn't you just talk to me? Why did you go behind my back like this? She took a deep breath as though gathering the courage to speak. It wasn't like that. At first it was just an experiment. Something to try. I wasn't looking to hurt you. James, I never wanted to hurt you. An experiment. James scoffed, the disbelief thick in his voice. You went to a swinger party behind my back, and it was an experiment. Are you kidding me? Claire flinched, but didn't respond. She looked away, her eyes darting to the floor, as though the truth was too hard to face. James felt a wave of anger wash over him. He couldn't stand it anymore. You don't get it, do you? I trusted you, Claire, and you betrayed that trust. All this time, you've been lying to me, pretending everything was fine while you were out there, doing God knows what, with some other guy. Her expression was unreadable now. It's not what you think, James. I wasn't trying to replace you. I wasn't trying to... No. James cut her off, his voice rising. Don't you dare try to justify this. You've already made your choice. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but James couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't stand the way she was looking at him, like she was somehow the victim in all of this. Get out, he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. Just get out. I don't want to hear it. For a moment, Claire didn't move. She just stood there, staring at him as though she couldn't believe what he was saying. But then, slowly, she turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. James stood there for a long time after she left, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal. He had never imagined that the woman he loved could do something like this to him. But the worst part wasn't what Claire had done. It was that, deep down, he had always known. The days that followed were a blur of emotion and confusion for James. He had never experienced anything like this before. This deep sense of betrayal, this crushing feeling that everything he had believed in was now shattered. His house felt empty without Claire's presence. It was strange. The bed seemed bigger, the silence louder, and his own thoughts felt like they were suffocating him. He'd never thought of himself as a man who would seek revenge, but after the confrontation, something inside him shifted. The more he thought about Claire's coldness, the more the idea of getting back at her started to take root in his mind. Not that he wanted her back. No, he was done with her. But the thought of her being with another man, of the life they had built together crumbling because of her lies, gnawed at him. James had been patient. He had given her every chance to come clean, to show some form of regret, to explain herself. But there was nothing. Claire had left him that night without a single apology, without a hint of remorse. She had walked out the door, leaving behind the life they had shared without so much as a backward glance. The only thing that kept running through his mind was why. Why had she done it? Was it just the thrill of the new, the excitement of being with someone else, or was there something deeper? He needed answers, real answers, but Claire had been so careful with her lies, so precise with her manipulation, that it was impossible to trust her words anymore. Then, a few days after she left, James did something he never thought he would. He called Dan. "Hey man, I need your help," James said, his voice low. He didn't want to burden his friend with his mess, but he was desperate. "I need to know what happened between Claire and this guy. I need to know how far it went." Dan was silent for a moment on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about this, James? I mean, you've already confronted her. You're just digging deeper into something that... I don't know if it's worth it." James ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "It's worth it. I need closure. I need to understand what the hell went wrong." Dan sighed. "Okay, I'll help you. But you have to promise me something. Don't do anything you'll regret." James didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what he was capable of anymore. A few hours later, Dan called back. He'd managed to dig up some information. "Her name's Brad, and he's a regular at that bar. He's been there for years. It's no secret he's into the lifestyle. He's also been pretty open about it with people. Word is, Claire's been meeting him there for months now, ever since she went to that first swinger party." James' stomach churned. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed hit him like a ton of bricks. Claire had been seeing this man for months, lying to him all that time, pretending like everything was normal. She had been living a double life, one that he had never even imagined. He thanked Dan for the information. But the news only made the knot in his chest tighten. He had hoped against hope that Claire would come to him and apologize, that she would beg for forgiveness, but instead it seemed like she had already moved on. James sat in his living room, the weight of it all sinking in. He thought about all the things they had shared, their late-night talks, their inside jokes, the dreams they had built together, and now none of it mattered. Claire had thrown it all away for the thrill of something new, something different, something she could hide from him without a second thought. It was then that James made a decision. He wasn't going to be a victim in this situation. He wasn't going to let Claire's betrayal define him, and he wasn't going to let her get away with treating him like this. He was done. That night, when Claire returned to get some of her things, James was ready. He had spent the entire day thinking about what he was going to say, how he was going to make her understand the depth of her betrayal. When she walked in, her eyes still holding that cool detachment, he stood in front of her, his back straight, his jaw clenched. "Claire," he said, his voice steady but cold, "I know everything. I know about Brad, about the swinger parties. I know you've been lying to me, and I can't keep living this way. I can't keep pretending that I don't know what's going on." Claire's eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but James raised his hand, silencing her. "No, I'm done listening to your excuses. This is on you, Claire. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine." She swallowed hard, her face shifting from surprise to frustration. "James, please. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. I never wanted to hurt you." James shook his head, the hurt evident in his eyes. "You don't get it, Claire. It doesn't matter what your reasons were. You betrayed me. You betrayed everything we built together. And now I can't be with someone I don't trust." For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of clarity. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just done. This wasn't the woman he had married. This wasn't the woman he had shared his life with. She was a stranger now. Claire took a step toward him, her eyes pleading. "Please, James, don't do this." But James took a step back, his face hardening. "It's over, Claire. I'm not your second choice. I'm not someone you can lie to and walk all over. I deserve better than this." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Claire standing in the middle of their home, the place where their love had once lived. It was over. There were no more words to be said, no more explanations to be given. As James walked out the door and into the cool night air, he felt a strange sense of relief. He had made his decision. He wasn't going to let her destroy him. He wasn't going to let this be the end of his story. The weeks after Claire left were the hardest days of James' life, but also the most liberating. The house, once filled with the noise of daily life and shared moments, now felt like a hollow shell. He had kept busy, working, going to the gym, even spending more time with Dan and other friends. Anything to distract himself from the pain that still gnawed at his chest every time he thought about Claire. But deep down, he knew he had made the right decision. She was no longer the woman he loved, the woman he thought he knew. The person who had betrayed him wasn't someone he could ever forgive. Not now, not ever. Claire tried to reach out a few times, sending texts and emails, trying to explain herself, to make him understand. But James refused to reply. He couldn't bring himself to engage with her lies any longer. Every time he thought about her, all he could see was the image of her walking into a hotel with that man, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. That was the woman she had become. He was done being her fool. One evening, almost 2 months after their confrontation, James was sitting on the porch, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the night. It was a quiet evening, the kind where everything felt still, as though the world was holding its breath. He thought about what Claire had said during their last conversation, that it wasn't like that she never wanted to hurt him. But in the end, none of her excuses had mattered. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. The phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Claire. "James, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up, but I want to fix things. I miss you. I love you." His first instinct was to delete the message and move on. He had spent so many nights torturing himself over what she had done, questioning his own worth, his own judgment. But now, he knew better. The truth was, he had loved Claire. He had given her everything, his trust, his loyalty, his heart, and she had thrown it all away. But love didn't mean clinging to someone who didn't respect him. Love didn't mean settling for someone who would lie and cheat. He stared at the message for a long time, thinking, but he didn't respond. Instead, he locked his phone and set it down beside him on the table. He wasn't going to fall into that trap again. Claire's words meant nothing anymore. Her actions had already spoken louder than anything she could say now. A few weeks later, he met with his lawyer. The divorce papers were straightforward, and James didn't fight it. There was no point in dragging it out. He wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of trying to fix something that was beyond repair. Tired of chasing someone who didn't value him. The divorce went through quickly. Claire tried to contest the terms, tried to get more than what was fair, but James didn't care. He signed the papers, gave her what she was entitled to, and never looked back. In the months that followed, James started to rebuild his life. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. He took trips to places he had always wanted to visit, got back into his hobbies, and reconnected with friends he had lost touch with during his marriage. Slowly, he started to feel like himself again. The man who had been betrayed, the man who had been lost, was starting to find his footing. One night, about 6 months after the divorce, James ran into Claire at a local coffee shop. It was awkward, to say the least. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, as though the weight of the past few months had taken a toll on her. But there was something else in her eyes, something James couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe, or guilt. "James," she said, her voice soft, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." He looked at her, taking in the woman she had become, and for the first time he felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just indifference. "I didn't expect to see you either," he replied, his tone calm but distant. She took a step closer, hesitating for a moment before speaking again. "I'm sorry for everything, James. For the way I treated you. For everything I put you through. I should have been honest with you. I should have told you the truth." James didn't respond right away. He took a sip of his coffee, then met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "It doesn't matter anymore, Claire. What happened happened. You made your choices. I made mine." She looked like she was about to say more, but James didn't give her the chance. He stood up, placing his empty coffee cup on the table. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said, his voice flat. "Goodbye, Claire." And with that, he walked out of the coffee shop, leaving behind the woman who had once been his wife, the woman who had broken his heart, but had ultimately set him free.